Welcome to our Blake's Breakfast speaking event, and thank you all for joining us. As we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm joining this event from within the ancestral, traditional, and unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples, including the territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. I'd also like to acknowledge that others are joining us from other traditional and unceded territories across this beautiful province and country. We're excited to be here, to host this event virtually. Over the past year, Life Sciences BC and our community have fortunately embraced virtual events. We're grateful that we can still come together to discuss and draw attention to the extraordinary work being done in the life sciences sector in BC, and to bring in speakers from other jurisdictions to help share their insights and thoughts with us. For those of you that do not know, Life Sciences BC is a not-for-profit society. Our members consist of academic and research institutions and local and global companies operating in the life sciences space, digital health, medtech, med devices and diagnostics, and therapeutics, and those companies that provide support and services to the broad life sciences ecosystem. We're funded through membership and the generous contributions of our sponsors and partners. This event was made possible by the support of our long-standing sponsor, Blake's. Thank you very much for your investment in Life Sciences BC and the life sciences ecosystem. We're all very grateful. At each event, we'd like to introduce our newest members. So today we'd like to welcome BCIT, Department of Biotechnology, Brigene Biosciences, and Pharma Directions. Thank you all and welcome to the Life Sciences BC family. We're always welcoming new members, so please reach out to any of us at LSBC or go onto our website for further information about membership. So on to today's event. We're excited to be here. The event will look at radiopharmaceuticals, a new class of drugs that is emerging to expand the spectrum of treatments for cancer, which deliver radiation directly and specifically to cancer cells. These drugs contain radioactive isotopes and can be used as both diagnostic and therapeutic agents. Targeting radiation therapy at the cellular level has the potential to reduce the risk of both short-term and long-term side effects of treatment, while proving effective at killing even the smallest clusters of cancer cells through the body. Reduced side effects and precision delivery are driving the interest and high growth in this new generation of radiopharmaceuticals. The global market for radiopharmaceuticals is estimated at $6.1 billion in 2019 and is projected to reach almost $12.6 billion by 2027. So a lot of new therapies are emerging, and we're super excited to learn more about it from our esteemed panel today. So now I'd like to introduce Joe Garcia, partner at Blake Castles Graydon LLP. Joe, if you want to turn on your camera. Joe is a partner in the securities group at Blake's and helps run the National Life Sciences Group. Joe's practice focuses on corporate finance and mergers and acquisitions. He advises public and private companies, investment dealers, venture capital, and private equity funds, and acts as an independent counsel to boards of directors. Prior to his career in law, Joe worked in corporate finance with the National Investment Bank and in clinical research with a multinational pharmaceutical company. Joe is a longtime and passionate supporter of the BC life sciences sector. It's hard to find someone more enthusiastic about what's going on in our sector in British Columbia right now. So welcome, Joe. And again, thank you so much for all your support.
Thanks very much. I really appreciate it, and for the kind introduction as well. It's a pleasure to be here again to introduce the speakers today, and just to make a general thanks to all of the speakers for giving their time to our community as we continue to figure out how to communicate and stay in touch with each other during this pandemic. It's quite amazing that, you know, I didn't expect that the attendance numbers would be exceeding historical numbers doing it virtually, and the follow-up through people watching who couldn't attend in person afterwards is quite remarkable as well. So thanks to the community for your support in joining us, and it's with that, it's my pleasure today to introduce to you Noel Brown, who's the Managing Director and Head of US Biotechnology Investment Banking at RBC Capital Markets. Noel advises on a broad range of strategic and corporate finance solutions for both public and private biotechnology companies. Mr. Brown is a highly experienced advisor, drawing on over 20 years in investment banking, having executed IPOs, follow-ons, convertibles, debt and equity private placements, venture capital and M&A as both sell-side and buy-side advisor. He currently serves on the National Board of Trustees of the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation, the Healthcare Advisory Board of the Partnership Fund for New York City, and the MIT Sloan School of Business Alumni Board. Noel received his MBA with a concentration in financial management from MIT Sloan School of Business, where he was Sherborne Fellow, his LLB from the University of Ottawa Faculty of Law, and his BA from the University of Western Ontario, where he was a neuro-oncology research associate and co-authored work published in the Journal of Neurosurgery. Please take a moment and welcome Noel today, who will present imminently. Hi, Noel.
Hi, Joe. Thank you for the incredibly kind introduction. It was almost as if I'd sent that to you myself. And while I've always focused on the U.S. market, I did live in Toronto from 2002 to 2005, and it was during that time that I was first exposed to radiopharmaceuticals. Actually, my very first exposure was back in 1990 when I worked in that brain research lab, experimental research unit at the University of Western Ontario, using I-125 for tagging collagenase type 4 in mice tumor models. But from a business perspective, I became reacquainted with nuclear medicine in my role as banker to Canadian companies like Draxis and MDS Nordion. And it was at that time I also came to appreciate the stark differences in attitude in the US versus Canada towards all things nuclear. In fact, I was amazed that in the early 2000s, the overhang of 3 Mile Island still clouded the air for many of my discussions with potential strategic partners and investors alike. So, Canada's success in developing a regulatory regime for the development and management of radioisotopes really created the opportunity for a competitive edge over other, ultimately, drug developers in the space. Despite the growing attention being paid to radiopharmaceuticals today, I believe that this is still an edge that Canada and BC in particular still have today. But it's imperative to continue to invest in this sector, this modality, and these therapies in order to maintain this competitive edge, lest competition from around the world also invests and then tries to leapfrog. So what I'll do is open up this presentation that I have to share with you all. And we did practice this. All right, so hopefully you can see this.
Looks good. Yeah,
great.
It looks good, no.
I'll change the view. Sorry, bear with me here a second. All righty. There we go. So global market demand is expected to grow to nearly 30 billion per year. And, it's growing at over, a cumulative growth rate of over 30% a year over year for the last, from last year, 2020, through to 2030. So it's dramatic growth. You'll see that while there is some marginal top-line growth in nuclear diagnostics, which are represented in the dark blue, the real driver of this growth in the space, as shown by the gray bars, is therapeutics. Skipping forward, when we look at the capital markets, and we see that from 2016 to date, we've seen a real uptick in financing activity, both in deal frequency and in deal size. The height of these bars generally reflects what was going on kind of in the broader financial markets. Starting in 2000, you'll start to see increased activity because in 2001, tech and TMT sort of broadly kind of die off a little bit. Biotech has a bit of a resurgence, and with that, radiopharmaceuticals had a bit of an upswell in 2002 through 2004. 2005, things kind of cooled off a little bit in advance of, that was more just like a cooling off of biotech more broadly, more so than specifically radiopharmaceuticals. And then obviously it ramps up until 2008 when things got terribly bad. And then 2008 to 12 was really kind of the post-recession dark years for biotech, with it increasing, with that activity coming back in 2013, and in particular in radiopharmaceuticals, both on the diagnostic side and the therapeutic side, you start to see increasing investment starting in 2014. And that's represented both in public and private offerings. So you can see it's roughly, depending on the year, about half, but on average. But increasingly more, a lot of private investment represented by the lighter blue stacked portion of the bar, and that's reflecting an increasing attention from venture capitalists, because they're seeing these opportunities for these companies to exit through IPO and ultimately acquisitions, in reasonable order. I don't want to say short order, because obviously these companies do have a lifespan. And below, at these various periods of time, we just sort of picked out sort of selected transactions for those particular years or periods. And you'll also see, in particular over the past couple of years, just the increasing role that some of these Canadian companies have played in the market and the attention that they're garnering. So the other part of this capital markets attention and attention from Wall Street and Bay Street is also driven by another exit, which is via M&A. And biotech M&A generally has been spotty over the past few years, but we have seen some really exciting outcomes in and around radiopharmaceuticals, and some of those are noted below. And you'll see some of the earlier successes, again, with deals around Draxis and Nordion, and Knight buying into the space as well. So it is one that sort of shows investors that, and this is more specifically a comment about radiopharmaceuticals, that this increased attention in capital and dollars going into the space driving development does ultimately end up in exciting exits, because pharma is not necessarily the innovator of technologies in this space, but oftentimes is the one to kind of get it over the finish line from a commercial perspective. So a lot of excitement in and around the space. I would say growing excitement. In some respects, I feel we're really at the beginning of this trend from at least from a Wall Street perspective and Bay Street perspective. There is a lot more opportunity, a lot more excitement to come, and I think it's a space that, in particular, just plugging BC is one that we expect to see some real exciting companies come out of the region, and exciting news and milestones to be achieved by many of those folks. So I will turn it back at that point, and thank you for your time.
Okay, getting set up. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Noel. That was great. I now have the pleasure of introducing you to Catherine Hayashi, who's the president and CEO of Triumph Innovations. It's the business interface and commercialization arm connecting Triumph, Canada's particular particle accelerator center, to the private sector via industry partnerships, licensing, and company creation. Catherine is a chartered professional accountant with more than 25 years of operational and strategical planning, finance, and governance experience in not-for-profit organizations, public and private companies, startups, and commercialization accelerators and incubators. Prior to Triumph Innovations, Catherine was the founding Chief Financial Officer of the Centre for Drug Research and Development, Canada's national drug development and commercialization engine. In addition to her work establishing CDRD as a leader in preclinical translational research and commercialization, Catherine presides as a director and audit committee chair of the Centre for Commercialization and Cancer immunotherapy at the hospital Maisonneuve-Rosemont, as well as the Discovery Parks Technology Incubator, and has served on the boards of several spin-off companies and has been a long-term member of our community here. So thank you very much, Catherine, for joining us today.
Thanks, Joe. So nice to see everybody, even if it's just virtually. So I'm going to try and share my screen here. Okay. So thanks everyone for joining today and for your interest in targeted radiotherapies. Hopefully you'll learn something here today, and we can have some follow-on discussions about how we can all work together and making this the latest and greatest thing. So just a little bit about TRIUMPH. We are Canada's Particle Accelerator Centre. So what that means is we're an international research hub. We have 40 years of commercial medical isotope production partnership, now with BWXT, originally with Nordion, and before that with AECL. And so over that time, we've produced over 60 million doses of isotopes for patients around the world. TRIUMPH is home to around 600 staff and students. And so this was a picture of when the Governor General visited and most of our staff. And this is the main Maison Hall, which is not a Maison Hall anymore, but that's what we still call it. And so behind all of those yellow cement shielding blocks is the world's largest cyclotron. And we are a cyclotron center. So there are multiple cyclotrons on our site. We have a 500 MeV cyclotron, the largest one of its kind in the world. We also have a TR24, which is in the process of being installed in our new facility. And then we also have a TR13, as well as 3 cyclotrons that are operated by the BWXT folks. And so our newest cyclotron will be housed in our newest building. It's called the Institute for Advanced Medical Isotopes. And this is a building that many of you in the community have helped us to bring to fruition, partnered with BC Cancer, the BC Cancer Foundation, UBC. It took the federal and provincial governments and all of these people to put together the will and the funding to bring the building to life. So I'm very happy to say that we are in the final stages of building. So that I think they're working on the roof now and the facades. The cyclotron will go in early next year. So thank you to everyone that helped on this project. And it really is going to provide labs and office space that are really devoted to medical isotope production, research, and bringing those sort of infrastructure and expertise pieces to be more available to the community in Canada, so we can leverage some of the advantages that Noelle was talking about. So medical isotopes, I'm hoping that many of you are already familiar. So we are often experiencing isotopes as imaging agents. Often they've been used to diagnose our injuries or diseases, but increasingly we're seeing isotopes being used to treat patients with diseases like cancer. The most common isotope used in diagnosis is technetium-99 with 30 million procedures per year. But the new generation of radiotherapies is what we want to talk about today. So targeted radiation therapy is a therapy that takes a radioactive compound, so a radioactive isotope like actinium-225 or lutetium-177. It is linked to a targeting molecule that are designed to target cancer cells, and they link to a cancer cell. So basically, once you deliver the warhead of the nuclear isotope to the cancer cell, it basically explodes and destroys the cancer cell. But because they act in a very precise way, so actinium-225 will kill cancer cells, but will kill only 1 or 2 cell widths at a time. So you have very little damage to surrounding tissue and organs, making it very exciting. So I would love to go on and take the whole time talking about it, but I would like to recommend that those who are interested check out a documentary that was produced, actually not by Triumph, but by an independent group of filmmakers that were funded by the TELUS Story Hive competition. But they came to Triumph and they wanted to tell the story of actinium and how it works as a cancer treatment and the promise that it holds for cancer patients and researchers. So it's at rarestdrug.com, and it's only 10 minutes long. So I think it's well worth the time if you have it. They did a remarkable job of telling the story, and I think we were all learning a lot of lessons at Triumph about how to better tell our story to a lay audience as a result. But this is sort of the gist of why it's so exciting, and a lot of you are involved in drug development, so you will see the impact of this type of story. So what you see here in the diagram is a scan of a patient, and those of you who know me I've shown you this picture before, so please bear with me one more time. The patient it's the same patient on the left. The patient is shown with advanced metastasized prostate cancer. So the cancer has spread from the prostate and you can see the black. So it's spread into the spinal cord, the ribs, the hips, the shoulders. It's a very advanced stage of cancer. This patient would have failed chemotherapy and radiotherapy and is now in an advanced state with probably 3 to 6 months to live. So after 3 treatments with actinium targeted using PSMA, and this is what the endocyte technology is. So after 3 treatments, you've seen a cancer patient in December 2014 with very high PSA level. In July of 2015, have resolved much of the cancer that's metastasized, and with a slightly elevated PSA level. They've given this patient 1 more treatment. So by September 2015, not only has the cancer resolved according to the scan, but the PSA level has dropped to remission level. So, I mean, how exciting is this? So this is literally the first couple of weeks I was at Triumph. I sat down with Paul Schaefer, who's the Associate Lab Director for Life Sciences, and I asked him what he was working on and interested in. And he showed me the scan, and I actually asked him if it was real or a computer simulation of something that was a dream. And he said, no, it's real. And so we said, well, this is what we need to work on. So Paul, of course, has been working on it since about 2014. I started in 2017, and we've been pushing this along, both in terms of producing the isotopes. So one of the main problems with actinium-225 is the current world supply is only enough for a few thousand patients per year. And in order for this to be a viable treatment, we really need to scale that up to tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of patient treatments per year. And so that's one of our main goals at Triumph, is to take our giant cyclotron and do the R&D involved to produce actinium, and then to scale up that R&D and build our supply chain so that we can get it to patients and researchers around the world. So as Noel talked about, we are seeing expected market demand to grow exponentially. We continue to see excellent results with actinium and lutetium, which is used similarly. We announced our partnership with Fusion Pharmaceuticals, a Canadian company that's a spin-off of the CPDC in Ontario. They raised over $400 million, including a successful IPO, which I believe was shown on Noel's slides. And so we're working together to accelerate the development of production methods for actinium. And in addition, Triumph also works on developing chelators and working with other researchers in drug development projects themselves. This is similar to what Noel showed, so I won't dwell on this. And again, just a little bit of an illustration reinforcing some of the points that Noel made. We are seeing some excitement in this space, and really a disproportionate impact of Canada on the world market. Canada is a pretty small company, but we do punch above our weight in the radiopharmaceutical arena. I know that we like to pride ourselves on being a small company with big impact, and I would say it's true for hockey, and I think that I can hand on heart say it's true for radiopharmaceuticals as well. So we do need to work together and continue to focus and fund opportunities in this space. to maintain our leadership position. So we've had some great announcements the past several months from Point Biopharma, advances with the Novartis program using lutetium, and then you're seeing companies like Bayer very interested in expanding their footprint in this space as well. So this takes me to a little bit of expansion on what we talked about before. So how do we accelerate? How do we focus and fund opportunities? And so we developed a funding proposal that we've submitted to the Federal Strategic Innovation Fund. So the Strategic Innovation Fund Stream 5 is really built to, designed to grow new national ecosystems. And so Triumph Innovations and CPDC are the co-leads for a proposal that is under review. So we're hoping that we're near the final stages of review, but it's a $30 million proposal that tries to address building out a whole ecosystem. And I think we're all aware of how important an ecosystem is. You have to have early stage R&D, to have mid-stage R&D, late stage R&D, and then clinical opportunities, and then marketable opportunities. We have to have supply chain that supplies all of the pieces in between, and then we have to have all the connectors. We have to have funders that will fund the technologies and companies that emerge. We have to have clinical support so that we can do the clinical studies. All of these pieces have to come together to create a viable and sustainable ecosystem. So we've come together with our partners, our lead partners, that the system is designed to offer support, funding, and collaboration and networking opportunities to everyone in Canada. But we've got leads from Bruce Power, McMaster, Triumph, BWXT, CPDC to push this initiative forward through the federal government process. I'm hoping that we might have some news before the end of the fiscal year, but you know, you can't predict government funding machinations with too much precision. So that's our story, and I will try to stop sharing.
Hi, thanks again, Catherine. That was great, and wishing you guys continued success. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Lana Janes, who's a venture partner at Admare Bioinnovations and interim CEO at Abdera Therapeutics. Lana has over 20 years of pharmaceutical development experience that spans the full life cycle of therapeutic product development. She's currently the interim CEO at Abdera Therapeutics and a venture partner at Admare Innovations. Previously, she served as Senior Vice President, Intellectual Property and Technology Development, and Chief Patent Officer at QLT Inc., where she oversaw all aspects of global R&D and IP strategy. She has also served as COO of Radiopharmaceuticals, therapeutics, and worked as a registered Canadian and US patent agent in the Toronto office of Ogilvy Renault LLP, now Norton Rose Fulbright, and at Hoffmann La Roche in Basel, Switzerland. Lana sits on the boards of directors of Life Sciences BC and several biotechs in Vancouver, and is an associate at the Center, at the Creative Disruption Labs. Lana received her AB in chemistry with honors from Harvard University and completed her PhD and postdoctoral fellowship in organic chemistry from McGill University. Thanks, Lana, very much for joining us today.
Great. Thanks very much, Joe, for that kind introduction. It makes me sound quite old when I think of all of the things that were listed out. But I want to thank Blake's and you, Joe, and also Life Sciences BC for giving me and Abdera Therapeutics and Admare the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm just going to try and let me see if I can share my screen and put up a few slides here. So let's see, share. So can everyone see my slides? I'll put it on presentation mode. Great. So again, thank you very much. I'm really excited to be able to give you a brief snapshot of a very new company on the BC ecosystem called Abdera Therapeutics that is focused on developing the next generation of radiotherapeutics for precision oncology. And really, it's our mission to develop these therapies for patients with advanced solid tumors, and that's patients with metastatic and refractory and relapsed cancers, for which there are very few other alternatives. And I think Catherine's slide from the 2016 landmark study out of Germany really shows how patients who currently are under the paradigm of moving into radiotherapeutics are often end-stage patients for which there are little therapeutic options available to them. To just give you a little snapshot of who Abdera is. So we were founded in January of this year, and we were launched as a spin-out company of Admari Bioinnovations, and we were in partnership with cellular biologics and some founding entrepreneur scientists I'll speak to you about in a second. And we're a discovery stage therapeutics company. So we're preclinical stage, and we're really excited about a differentiated and proprietary modular platform technology that we've developed internally to the company that we think will enable the company to really deliver the next generation of targeted radiotherapeutics. Importantly, our platform is applicable to a broad range of cancer targets and radioisotopes. And right now, the company is busy really building out our pipeline with multiple programs under development currently. And as I mentioned, AbCellera is not only a founding co-partner of the company, but also we work in partnership with AbCellera to develop our platform. And, you know, this is a really exciting time for the field of targeted radiotherapeutics. And we think that we're well positioned to really to capture the excitement around that. I wanted to tell you a little bit about our founding management team. And I think this is something that Catherine alluded and Noelle did as well, alluded to how Canada is uniquely positioned. But I also think that British Columbia and our Vancouver ecosystem is also uniquely positioned to really capitalize on building world-class radiotherapeutics companies. And I think this comes from the ecosystem, the healthy ecosystem that's been built over the several decades in British Columbia and that we're continuing to build and revitalize right now. So I'm just, you can see here's a picture of me on the left. And as Joe mentioned, I was really fortunate to spend 12 years of my career at QLT, which of course was one of the anchor companies here in British Columbia, and from which many of the folks who are now building new companies in the ecosystem really learned the trade of drug discovery and drug development. And I think that's an important part of why we all are really building a community here and continue to build it in British Columbia to really foster the next generation of companies. Another one of the co-founders and co-developers of this technology is Dr. Mike Abrams, and many of you will know Mike. He was the founding CEO of Anormet, which is a successful company here in British Columbia. And he was also CEO at Inimex. And importantly, Mike is also a pioneer in the radiotherapeutics and radiodiagnostic space, having been one of the inventors of Cardiolite during earlier parts of his career in the 90s. And then we're also really fortunate to have as a co-founder and co-inventor of the technologies, Adam Judge, who is our Senior Vice President of Research and Development. And many of you will also know Adam from his years of leading oncology development at Techmira and also working as interim head of biology at Genevant. Importantly, I think the team that we've brought together has the expertise to really in the past has shown that they can build and finance companies from discovery through to commercialization and develop products. And we think that's a really important part of the value proposition that this team at Abdera is bringing to the table. Another one of our co-founding members of Abdera is a very well-known serial entrepreneur, of course, David Main, who many of you will know, and Kamal Lam. So we have some good bones to start out the company. You know, as Catherine alluded to, this is a really exciting area, particularly alpha therapies. But with great power comes great challenges in terms of making sure that we can harness the power of those alpha particles to precisely deliver at the location where we need them to. And just to tell you a little bit about alpha therapies, alpha particles, which are produced by actinium-225 and other radioisotopes that emit these alpha particles, are about 1,000 times more powerful than beta particles. And some of you may be aware, and Noel showed, there's approved therapy Lutathera, which uses beta particles. So alpha particles are highly, highly powerful and have a very short cell kill radius. So there's great promise in being able to deliver these in situ precisely to tumor cells. One of the other attractive parts of alpha therapies in particular is that they have capabilities to work both as a single agent and in combination therapies. And for those of you in the oncology space know, single agent activity for oncology products is a high bar to reach. And I think that Catherine's slide that showed the 2016 landmark studies shows the power of these to be single agent therapeutics. The other thing that's quite nice about these technologies is that you can bypass tumor heterogeneity in being able to use these as targeted therapies. And so what we've done, and time doesn't permit to go into really the details of what our purpose-built platform is, but we like to say at Abdera, we have purpose-built out a platform to really address a lot of the challenges that the field is trying to address now in terms of precision delivery of alpha particles. And that is, we need to be able to precisely deliver them. We need to be able to spare healthy cells, and we need to be able to balance those off-target toxicities with tumor uptake. Many of you are aware and familiar of external beam radiation, but of course these targeted radiotherapies are internally delivered. And so part of the challenge is with injection of these high energy particles in these carrier constructs that Catherine walked through, these 4-part constructs, you need to make sure that effectively you're delivering them appropriately to what we like to call the right postal code on the tumor cells, and quickly clearing any unbound versions of it to avoid these off-target tox issues. As you can see that right now, as Catherine mentioned, actinium-225 is really emerging as the alpha particle of choice that several therapeutic companies are developing, and we're excited to be working on actinium-225 as well. I think this is a related picture to the study that was shown previously, and what this shows as well is that targeted alpha therapy can actually follow targeted beta therapy. So on the left is a patient with metastatic castration-resistant prostate cancer who was treated with beta therapy that did not have complete responses to their tumors, and then followed by this treatment with alpha therapy. Once again, these patients are showing remarkable improvements. And so in addition to the chance for alpha therapies to be a single agent therapy, there's also an emerging science around not having to select beta versus alpha therapies, but being able to use them in concert. And again, because this is precision oncology, coming up with the right solutions for the patients relative to what their cancer progression is looking like. An important part of the precision oncology part of targeted alpha therapies is the ability to actually have this radiotheranostic pairing. So what's exciting is by swapping out the therapeutic isotope with an imaging isotope, we are able to, in advance, image patients to be able to select those who are likely responders. That is to show that their tumors are expressing these unique postal codes on the surface of their tumors. And so that we know in advance of putting them through therapies and then waiting to see will they respond, we can image them and say they are a strong likely responder for these therapies, and then delivering the targeted alpha therapy to them. And what is also exciting about this opportunity is it provides you with a unique opportunity to image in advance where the therapeutic drug will go, and to for all of these large number of METs, both large solid METs, large solid tumors, and as well the smaller metastases. So you can see that this is a really exciting part of the toolbox for a nuclear medicine specialist and oncologist to be able to really build a precision medicine approach for their patients. I think Noel did a really great job at showing how momentum is continuing to build in the radiotherapeutic space. So I don't think I need to go over those again, but I've just highlighted again 3 of the large M&A deals that have happened over the past several years that have attracted attention, and I think has really made a fertile ground for venture capital and other investors to come in and help us develop these therapies. And I think, to reiterate as I close out, Canada really has a unique scientific advantage in this space, given the decades of excellence in development of medical radioisotopes and now therapeutic isotopes, and as well with the strong biotech ecosystem we have. It really creates the confluence of what I like to think of the expertise in antibody and small molecule development. Certainly our work with cellular highlights the opportunity to apply really cutting edge Canadian companies to help build new Canadian companies, and really positions us for really exciting opportunities to build new therapies. So I really want to thank you all, and merci for taking the time to hear just a short snapshot of Abdera Therapeutics. We're hoping to be able to come back to the community as we continue to advance our therapies and keep you updated on how things are going at the company. But so I'll stop there, and thanks very much again for letting me share my story for a few minutes.
Thanks, Lana. And we're now going to have a little bit of a discussion with our speakers. So Catherine and Noel and Lana, if you could come turn on your screen. I was going to say open your screen. That's great. So for everybody in the audience, please add some questions to the Q&A. I'll be monitoring that. I want to start with thank you all for your presentation. It's super interesting. It's an area that I'm continue to be more and more interested in as I learn more about it. So wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things that have come up, and supply chain is obviously a huge element of this. So on the assumption that these radiopharmaceuticals take off the way that they're going to, and deliver on the promise, do we have the supply chain built out to be able to support that? And maybe Catherine, you talked a little bit about the expansion that you're doing, and is that even going to be enough?
Well, honestly, I hope it's not enough, because that means these treatments really work across a broad spectrum of applications. But yeah, the supply chain is also in process. I mean, literally, we have multiple people that want every curie of our millicurie of actinium that we can produce right now. It's a very scarce commodity, but we literally are working every day to scale that up and scale it up quickly to meet the needs of companies like Abdera that are building out their technologies. So we're hoping that we are going to dovetail so that we are able to scale up in time for people not to have delays in their clinical development and FDA process. So we're working on that. And the same thing for lutetium. We're seeing multiple announcements of companies like ITM, Bruce Power, that are repurposing nuclear reactors to produce medical isotopes. It's very exciting. And for the nuclear power industry, they're very interested in a story where, there's good news about nuclear reactors, that they produce medical isotopes that are going to save lives. So we're all in a desperate rush to try and build the supply chain, but and have it dovetail with the demand for isotopes. But we are kind of building the plane as we're flying. But we have a dedicated group that's trying to pull it together. And I do think that was part of the rationale for the Strategic Innovation Fund proposal. We have reactors, we have cyclotrons, and we can leverage those existing infrastructure pieces and the expertise around them to these new supply chain uses. But we have to work together. We need funding from the government to do some of it. We need funding from industry partners. It really is, how do we get the public-private sectors, including government, including research institutions, including investors, to help build out the supply chain as appropriate. But I think the key, what did we learn from COVID? You can do a lot of technology development very quickly if you work together in a coordinated way, and the government really digs in and helps as well. So I think some of the lessons that we learned from COVID can help us focus, fund, accelerate efforts where it counts. And I think this medical isotope story, where a new generation of treatments for cancer and other diseases is a worthwhile focus for all of us.
Thanks, Catherine. And these are obviously not insignificant capital investments. To your point about needing the collaboration. And Nola, as someone who's sitting, I believe, in New York, scanning the world of radiopharmaceuticals and looking at Canada with your Canadian roots as well. Of course, you would always want to invest in Canada first, I'm sure. But maybe you can talk about that challenge as from the investment perspective, as you look at companies and the therapeutics that are coming forward. How does the investment community look at this massive capital investment that's really required and critical for the supply chain?
Thanks, Wendy. So it's been a big theme over the past few months in particular, and oftentimes it's sort of spurred by the individual bankers involved, or maybe it's a particular firm that's more focused on it than others. But there is such an incredible opportunity here that's to some extent unmined. We're seeing a lot of attention and success around the deals that all three of us have highlighted, but there are a number of investors who are kind of on the sidelines but leaning in, that really want to participate but need help to figure out how. And maybe it's around company formation, maybe it's around funding certain kind of partnerships or JV type relationships, but there is a lot of capital that wants to participate in this space because they believe in the potential, right? I mean, we really have potential for some magnificent cures and results that we just have been unable to tap into for several years. There is a small group, and I mean very small group of investors that we've been speaking to who are somewhat sensitive to the point that was being made earlier about the supply chain. And it's almost like it creates a bit of an apprehension, because there's a belief that even if we have success and get therapies approved, what does it matter, because I can't get enough, actinium-225 or whichever isotope you plan to use in order to have a real impact. And my position on that is that, we are not only are we developing therapies using these radioisotopes, there are technologies being developed, kind of frankly in the background every day, in order to either recycle other radioisotopes and somehow modify their decay so we can turn radium-226 into actinium-225 in a very efficient way. And so it's not a reason to not invest, right? I mean, frankly, it isn't a reason to invest. And I think, to Catherine's point, when you look at combining capital with sort of know-how and technology, as we did in COVID, the results you can generate are just immeasurable, right? If you would have asked me 2 years ago how quickly it takes to come up with a vaccine, I'm like 2 to 3 years at best, right? And now we've proven that, again, with the right kind of capital, with the right kind of support from various governments and countries, a lot can get done. So, long-winded answer, but I would say, by and large, there is a tremendous amount of interest in the space. The level of skepticism regarding supplies is sort of small, but that in and of itself is creating a lot of opportunity, because there's continued investment in companies who are looking to address the supply issue. So it's a very interesting time in the space.
That's great. Thanks, Noel. Lana, I want to turn to you because the other, of course, critical element in the supply chain is people. And, can you talk a little bit about what are the skills? I mean, this is a very interesting and complex space that does something that BC is really well known for, is bringing cross-disciplinary science together. So can you talk about the type of people as you're building up companies that are leading the companies and the talent that you would be looking for?
Yeah, no, absolutely glad to, Wendy. And I think that, this is a really important part of why I think the BC community is well positioned to help drive the next generation of radiopharmaceuticals companies. When we think about the talent that we need, I like to think of the talent as being as broad as what these targeted radiotherapies actually look like. And they're quite multidisciplinary unto themselves as drugs. There is a chemistry, usually chemistry component. And so expertise in organic chemistry, organometallic chemistry to help in the design of novel chelators to help precisely deliver these radioisotopes is needed. Expertise in biologics and protein engineering are needed to help develop some of these novel targeting vector approaches. And of course, development of the radioisotopes themselves requires deep expertise in physics, nuclear medicine, physicians who have expertise in oncology, and most importantly, nuclear medicine as well. And when we look, we can find all of those elements in Canada and in the BC community. So that's why we really believe there's fertile ground here. And a few years ago, when I started initially at Admare Bioinnovations, I came in to explore the potential for, as the community knows, Admare has 3 missions, which is really to build companies, to build talent, and to build the ecosystem. And my initial mission was to say, should we be building a company in this space? And the answer was yes, because of these unique components that are in our community, and particularly the talent that we can bring together. So when I look at, my company, Abdera, in terms of who's in that company and who will we be hiring in the near term as we build out the team, it's really a breadth of scientific expertise, from nuclear physics and organic and inorganic chemistry, all the way to complex protein engineering and biologics and antibody discovery. So I think it's really, we are uniquely positioned here to be able to bring that talent into the company. And of course, then you also need to, these are drug discovery and drug development programs. So what you also need are people who've done it before, to unlock the capital and to be able to give the investors, as Noel mentioned, there's a lot of question and uncertainty. This is a small but growing list of, I think, funders who believe in this space or are starting to understand this space more. They also have to believe that leading all of these activities will be management teams who have done this before, can deploy the capital and understand how to get drugs approved and bring them up through translation and discovery all the way through clinical development. And I think we're really able to capitalize on the rich experience that BC has had as well in, people that we can bring into the company who've done it before, who've brought drugs all the way through. And that's where I had highlighted our management team. I think we're really fortunate to have some veterans from the field who can really help us build the company.
Yeah, thanks. It definitely seems that we have a very strong cluster here in this space that is emerging, and largely also with the footprint of Triumph being in Vancouver and BC makes a massive step forward for us.
I was going to say, Wendy, just to add to what Lana said, I 100% agree with everything Lana said. But, one of the things, because I've been in the biotech space for quite a while, but the nuclear medicine space and the medical isotope space is really interesting, because much as like everybody in biotech kind of knows each other, there's like probably a 2 or 3 degrees of separation. Like the nuclear side is like 1 or 2 degrees of separation. Like everybody kind of knows each other, has worked together in some respect. I mean, I think even for abdera, part of the reason why Mike Abrams and David Main were interested in founding abdera, Mike Abrams was on the Triumph Innovations board, and he saw, the same slides that we're talking about, and obviously saw the potential in that technology. So part of it is, it's a small community. I think we do work well together. People are used to working together and finding a way to support each other and collaborate. Fusion Pharmaceuticals and BWXT and Triumph. I mean, there's so many interconnections of people that did grad school together, people that worked on a project together, people that collaborated on something together, even more so than in kind of normal biotech, which is really interesting. And I think it's an opportunity for Canada, because a lot of the McMaster program has, if you drew a tree, there was so many connectors that you could trace back to the McMaster education system, and that's part of the ecosystem as well. So anyway, I just wanted to illustrate it's a unique wrinkle, I think, in the nuclear medicine side.
And with that, to build off of that, what advice, Catherine, Lana, would you have for people that are interested in getting into this space? Like, what is the path? You've just described some people that have, 20 years of experience in this, and this, as you say, this tree that you can trace everybody to. So if you're early in your career right now and want to get into this space, what is the natural path? Is there one?
I mean, I think things are growing and accelerating so quickly that it's literally impossible to find people with all the perfect experience and qualifications. So those people, you have to work hard to find them, but our door is open for people that don't have necessarily direct experience, but have skills and experience that they can bring to the table. And as Lana said, it's so multidisciplinary. You need such a broad spectrum of skills to advance the project. I mean, we're in the process of hiring a project manager right now, and we have interviewed a couple of people that have kind of nuclear experience, but also people that are just excellent project managers. And so a lot of the things that we do are transferable. It's nice to have specialized skills, but I think at the rate of growth, we have to pull in more excellent people into the story. So there are opportunities, and please take a look at the Triumph site if you'd like to work in this area. We have positions that we are working to fill, and more to come.
Lana, do you have anything to add to that? And then Noel, I'm going to come to you for a final question.
Yeah, and I just echo everything that Catherine said. I think that the thing to remember is, and I think when I was a student or starting in my career, if I had seen something that said nuclear medicine or radiotherapeutics, I would have thought, I don't have direct experience in that, so I probably won't look into that opportunity. And I think what we've been trying to impress upon today is it takes a real village of different technologies to really develop this next stage of radiotherapeutics and radiodiagnostics. And so as this emerges as just one more modality in the battle against cancer, I think that there's so many skill sets that don't really require you to have had previous experience in working in nuclear medicine that are directly applicable to really help building this industry and really developing what we hope is really the next generation of cancer therapeutics that will be transformational. And I would also say it's like, keep a watch out for therapeutics. We'll be hiring and looking for, we're really excited to be building out our operations here in Vancouver. So for sure, stay tuned, everyone. And I'd love for anyone to reach out to me who's interested in the opportunity. And I can direct you to a bunch of my colleagues, or hopefully we'll have something that might be of interest to you within the company. But it is a small but very vast network, and people want to help other people. So I would say don't be shy in reaching out to any of us on the panel today, and we can help direct you on who to talk to and explore your interest in the field.
And in the spirit of shameless plugs, remember to go to the Life Sciences BC job board, where a lot of these jobs are posted. But Noel, I want to turn to you because you have this amazing position that you can look around the world. And what is your perspective on where BC and Canada is in this space? And what advice would you have for us as we continue to build out this exciting area?
Yeah, it's interesting. A point I was making a little earlier was just the competitive edge, the competitive advantage that Canada broadly, but BC also in particular has right now. And I think there are incredible resources in the region, both in people and the skill sets that both Lana and Catherine were highlighting, but in the technology and in the facilities. And I think the thing that people should bear in mind, and by people I mean sort of Canadians and Canadian government as well, is that there is a stickiness to this industry. I think oftentimes there's perhaps a sensitivity or an apprehension to invest in a sector or in companies or in a group of companies that present some form of flight risk. And we have to remember that in this sector, you can't just pick up like, a cyclotron and move it, right? These accelerometers are like, these things, everything is big, right? These are, they're sticky by virtue of sheer mass, right? And so it is true, in a way, it's a Canadian resource, right? I mean, literally just thinking this now, it's analogous in some respects to, I'm being extreme here, but mining rights or oil rights where, they're physically attached to the land, right? And therefore they become these natural resources or these quote unquote Canadian industries. All things nuclear are kind of the same way. You can't physically move them. And on top of that, Canada is well advanced in creating a regime and a regulatory system that allows us to kind of work in the space, right? I mean, there are countries that are so, are considerably further behind in even coming up with a regime on how to manage isotopes. So, I would encourage folks to really pay attention to the space from a multiple perspective. I mean, it's multifaceted, right? There's job opportunities, there's investment opportunities, but from the government's perspective, there's an opportunity to really support an industry and perhaps a subsector within life sciences that really could be like, and has been, frankly, in many cases, world leading. So I'll get off my soapbox, but that's kind of.
Well, thank you, Noel. I mean, I think it's good for us to get your perspective on that. And I totally agree with you. Catherine gave me a tour of the Triumph facility. You can't pick that up and move that quickly in the back of your car. But I think, Canada has had a history of making some major investments over time. And, hopefully we're going to see that we're going to do this in this space because it's not only a huge opportunity for us economically, but the innovation as it relates to healthcare and the future of cancer care is so exciting. So, yes, Catherine, we're all working together to support it and let you've got a lot of people on the call on this webinar that are super excited about this space. So if we can help you with your application for funding, let us know. I think I've already written a letter of support, but I can do it again. Anyway, with that, thank you to our panelists. As they've all said, they're more than welcome, happy to connect with you offline. So reach out for them because it's great to have your expertise, and thanks for your time. I think now we are moving to Joe, who is going to introduce our next speaker, Cody. So Joe and Cody, can you join us?
Hi.
All right.
Excellent. Thanks again to the panel members, and just a quick thank you also to Wendy and the team at Life Sciences BC. You guys have done an incredible job, especially over the last couple of years in dealing with the challenges we face. So thank you for your hard work. It's now my pleasure to introduce Cody Sheriff. This is consistent with the format we've used over many years to give opportunities to companies to introduce themselves or update themselves to our community. And it's a pleasure to introduce Cody. He's the founder and CEO of Serenity Bioworks. He received his MSc in biology from the University of Waterloo and authored peer-reviewed work on small heat shock proteins and their ability to protect kidney epithelial cells. In 2017, he founded Serenity Bio after seeing the promise of small heat shock proteins to be used as therapies for autoimmune nephropathies. And subsequently raised a Serenity seed round with premier VCs in California. Cody also organized Serenity's acquisition of its lead HSP drug, SER-101, in 2020. At present, he is responsible for Serenity's corporate strategy, team building, and partner engagement. Hi, Cody, and thanks for joining us.
Hey, Joe, thanks for including me today in the LifeSci BC organization, for giving me the opportunity to introduce Serenity Bio. So I will just share our introductory presentation here. So Serenity Bio is a stress protein company. We're deriving therapeutics from cellular stress pathways. We're leaders in heat shock proteins, autoimmunity, and myeloid cell biology. As Joe mentioned in the introduction there, we acquired our lead therapeutic, SER-101, which uniquely targets myeloid cells to generate immune tolerance. And there's a lot of data to support its use from preclinically validated by academic third-party labs. There's phase 1/2A clinical data that we found interesting associated with this drug, and we believe it can address many of the unmet needs for lupus nephritis. So for those that aren't too familiar with lupus nephritis, it's a kidney disease afflicting lupus patients. There's approximately 100,000 patients in the US that are mostly female. It's a major cause of patient mortality. 10 to 20% of patients develop end-stage renal disease within 10 years of diagnosis. And there's been recent approvals for this disorder that are offering a great improvement from the standard of care, such as like LUPKYNIS and BENLYSTA. And there still seems to be a 40% ceiling in terms of clinical response, and we believe that we can improve upon that. And then furthermore, heart disease is also a major cause of mortality for both LN and SLE patients. So just a little high-level background on the pathology of lupus nephritis and lupus in general. These patients have a heterogeneous genetic predisposition to this disorder, and usually involves an environmental trigger like UV light or something of that nature to act as a catalyst for the disorder. And just in broad strokes, there's a misrecognition of themselves as foreign. So their myeloid cells, dendritic cells, misrecognize their own antigens, their own self-proteins and DNA, nuclear proteins as foreign, and they generate adaptive responses against themselves. And so antibodies generate against their self-antigens, and immune complexes form. They deposit within the kidney, and there's, as a result of the immune complex deposition and the overwhelming of macrophages and their ability to clear those immune complexes, there is a large amount of inflammation that can occur in the kidneys, and cellular destruction results of the podocytes and mesangial cells. Over time, there's a decrease in kidney function, and as a result, patients develop an increased amount of protein within their urine, and a decrease in their glomerular filtration rate. So there are other companies that are addressing different parts of the immune system. We have a great BC company right now with I believe the premier therapeutic for lupus nephritis, LUPKYNIS, and that's commercialized by Aurinia. And then BENLYSTA, which is targeting B cells. Where we think we can fit within this space is targeting myeloid cells, which we believe a large part of the patient population has some dysfunction within their ability to modulate their macrophages appropriately. So just a little background on the core kind of idea behind Serenity. We're using heat shock proteins, and most of the cells within your body have heat shock proteins, and it's a way for your cells to respond to cellular stress. So an increase in temperature or decrease in pH, something of that nature. And your cell produces these heat shock proteins in high abundance, and it's a way for the cell to try and survive. And within the last 20 or 30 years, there's been a lot of work that has shown that these heat shock proteins are also secreted from the cells, and it's a way to communicate with your immune system to try to also avoid cellular destruction and avoid immune-mediated cell destruction. So a cell can do this through secreting the heat shock protein through as a free soluble molecule or through exosomes as well. Now, in 2020, we saw the opportunity to acquire the clinical rights to HSBB5. And so this is just a flood of information to show that the mechanism of action has been pretty well characterized with the heat shock, this particular heat shock protein, and it's by many different groups. And I won't go into too many details at this moment here, but just a unique feature with this heat shock protein is it's actually a large molecule. It can be 400 kilodaltons to 1,000 kilodaltons. And that in itself can attract scavenger receptors of macrophages and bring it close to that particular cell type and allow it to interact with cellular receptors that are associated with immune tolerance. So after acquiring the rights to the drug, we wanted to show preclinical proof of concept. And in that same year, we were able to show a reduction in proteinuria in mice that have an accelerated form of lupus. And in addition to that, we showed an improvement in kidney histopathology. We compared our results from that model to drugs that are currently in phase 3 and 4, particularly rituximab, obinutuzumab, and anifrolumab, and showed that we compared favorably well. And from that, we also have the data to support its safety, which is a big milestone for a drug in 76 healthy patients. We also have pharmacology data from this trial that was performed in 2015, which we're using to inform our clinical designs for lupus nephritis. There are other heat shock protein companies out there. You know, the founder of Arenia, or one of the founders of Arenia back in the day, also had a heat shock protein company, Richard Glickman, and I believe he has a presence in Left Side BC as well. And I was able to connect with him in the last few weeks. But anyway, the other companies out there are targeting other disorders. We're using their information to also inform how we're designing our clinical trials. Just flashing the IP that we have protection up until 2040. And we also have not just one product for lupus nephritis, but we are also, because we're a team of scientists, it allows us to expand and generate new therapies based off of the work that we've been doing in-house. And so we have many programs that, 2 of which are publicly displayed here, but then there's also some other work that we're developing that is looking extremely promising for rheumatic disorders. And just giving you a glimpse of what is under the hood for some of these other programs. So Cargotec notably is able to induce immune tolerance towards AAV therapeutics. And for those of you that are familiar with AAV therapeutics, it can generate a lot of antibodies after a single dose, preventing a second dose from being administered. And we were able to show that you could redose, at least in mice, an AAV therapeutic. So we're a seed stage company, and we're backed by Mayfield Fund, SOSV, and True Ventures. And so we have acquired clinical data, toxicology, and CMC for SIR-101. And right now, I'm currently in diligence for a Series A financing to fund our clinical readout for lupus nephritis. We're a team of scientists that have emerged out of Ontario, notably Marcella Bronstein, who is our VP of Translational Research. She has 10 years of experience conducting translational research, PhD in immunology. She's been fantastic to design and execute Serenity's translational studies. In addition to Spencer Berg and Justin Knapp, who are both been vital for us as a seed stage company. On our board, Jim Johnston, who is a former director of inflammation at Amgen, Spent his career there before he was a professor of immunology at the University of Belfast. He's now the CSO of Impact Bio. We use a lot of consultants as a seed stage company, potentially future employees, and we have a world-class science and medical advisory board for lupus nephritis, notably George Sokos, David Wobsey, Chaim Putterman, Joe Merrill, Carolyn Jeffries. These are all premier names in lupus nephritis, and they've been very helpful in guiding our company at the current stage. So with that, I just want to thank again, Joe, for giving me the opportunity to introduce myself and Serenity Bio to the LifeSci BC community. Thank you.
Thanks, Cody. Certainly very, very exciting. And it's great to have you be part of the Life Sciences BC community. So welcome, and super exciting to hear what you're up to. With that, I'm going to close off our event. I want to thank again our speakers, Noel Brown, Catherine Hayashi, Dr. Lana Janes, and Cody Sharif. And of course, a huge thanks again to Joe for Blake's. He's a huge champion for the life sciences sector and has been a long supporter of Life Sciences BC. So we really appreciate it, and the whole entire community always enjoys our Blake's events, and someday we'll return to having breakfast at them. Right now, everyone has to bring their own coffee. We do have a few events coming up. I think, Peter, you're going to show the event slide. In October, we have an event with Gallings, which is on discovery to market, the role of IP strategy in drug development. And in November, we have our annual investor summit coming up. So Invest in BC, as it's being branded, presented by Lumiere Ventures. It is shaping up to be a really great event. We already have over 100 people registered, I think investors from about 40 different countries so far. And we'll be announcing the companies that will be presenting, I believe, next week. On November 18th, we have our McCarthy speaking series. Then we'll be doing our showcase series virtually in Kelowna. And then December, we will be having our last Blake's event for the calendar year of fiscal 21. So thanks, everybody. We really appreciate you reaching out. I also want to take a moment to thank all of our sponsors, our platinum sponsors, Admare, Ferris, GSK, Janssen, Pfizer, and Roche, and our gold sponsors of Cellular, Blake's, IMC, Novartis, and Stem Cell. We appreciate all of your support. We really, especially over the last 18 months, appreciate everyone hanging with us and continuing to support the ecosystem and everything that happens for our amazing sector in British Columbia. And with that, I will end this webinar. It is recorded, so you're welcome to go back and see it at a later date. It will go out in the events newsletter next week. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Ryan and Peter, for the behind the scenes production support. Have a great day and happy Thanksgiving, everyone.